The ballroom was a wave of silk and light crystal chandeliers, pouring warm rain over impossible dresses when she said it. "Dad, you weren't invited. Please leave." The words dropped like ice in my chest. I had driven an hour, a gift wrapped in white paper, ready to stand beside my daughter on a day I'd imagined since she was small. Instead, the entrance became a stage, and I was an uninvited actor in a scene rehearsed without me. Everything blurred, the string quartet frozen mid-stroke, a champagne flute shattering, faces turning like a slow tide. Emily's dress swelled behind her like a cloud of silk, and Michael's jaw was a calm stone beside her, a new family drawing a line I no longer fit across. I set the box on a nearby table, palms steady despite thunder in my ribs. "Sweetheart," I said, "I paid for this, remember?" Her eyes flashed and then turned away. Walking out of that hall felt like walking through my past. Gravel bit at my boots. My pickup sat like an honest machine among tinted SUVs. Rain threatened. An old calm settled over me, the engineer's patience that had measured beams and budgets. The father who had built our life from nothing. The pain was sharp, but beneath it was recognition. How much I'd given away without asking for thanks. Inside the truck, I made a list. Contracts, receipts, authorization codes, every figure that proved what I'd invested in her life. Banks move funds with a call. Vendors secure equipment when authorizations fail. The thought landed with a clarity that surprised me. If she wanted to exclude me publicly, I could make this a lesson she wouldn't forget. Not revenge, accountability. A precise correction. I called the bank first. My voice was slow as I verified social details. "I need to place stops on current authorizations," I told a representative. The woman typed and said, "Processing." One by one, I called caterers, florists, the string quartet professional, succinct. Each operator hurried to secure assets. With every hang-up, the plan tightened. Centers dismantled. Food service halted. Instruments unplugged. The reception would not proceed as billed. The thrill I felt wasn't cruelty. It was the quiet power of setting boundaries by action. I'd measured twice and forgiven once my whole life. This would be measured and final. No yelling, no spectacle. Just the clean bureaucracy of canceled transactions. The same tools I'd used for decades to support her comforts. If she could disown me in a hallway of witnesses, I could disown the wedding's ledger in a way she couldn't pretend away. Before leaving the lot, I dialed one more number, the florist who had flown orchids from Ecuador. When she answered, I kept my tone level. "I'm calling to cancel payment authorizations for today," I said. "Please collect your arrangements." There was a beat, then a practical, workable plan. "We'll be there in 15 minutes, she said. Rain began in a solid sheet as I drove away. Emily stood in the doorway watching me go, a silhouette against crystal lights. Her expression was unreadable. The gift box on that table seemed small and absurd. But the ledger in my head was large and steady. This was not petty revenge. It would be a lesson about taking and giving, about consequences when love becomes an entitlement. I started the engine and drove. The rest would fall in quiet, bureaucratic order, and when they did, her perfect day might collapse in a way no speech could fix. My hands gripped the wheel. Neither triumph nor bitterness, but the hard satisfaction of a man balancing the books. I watched the first florist van pull up through my windshield, as if I was watching a slow-motion replay of something I had set in motion. Susan and her assistants moved like professionals. No drama, just efficient recovery of property, the contract now left unpaid. Inside the ballroom, laughter faded, and tulips were lifted into crates. Guests paused mid-sip, puzzled expressions replacing toasts. My phone buzzed with Emily's name. She called and left frantic messages. I let them stack. The cancellation rippled outward: photographers, unplugged cameras, servers covered trays with white cloths. A string quartet's bow stopped on a single note. The scene shifted from celebration to focused panic. An entire ceremony can unravel faster than a seam. I drove home through rain, mind working in ledger form. Every call had been antiseptic. No yelling, just facts. Payment revoked, assets reclaimed. Businesses acted to protect themselves. I could almost taste the irony simmering ahead like metal heating under a torch. I'd always treated life like a construction project. Identify weak points, reinforce structure, remove faulty elements. Tonight, that language applied to relationships. Back at the house, I opened file drawers that held receipts, spreadsheets, and a lifetime of sacrifices I'd never tallied publicly. Tuition invoices, car purchases, rent transfers that became a narrative. Numbers translate to choices. Choices reflect priorities. I began to build a timeline, not to punish, but to show the scale of what I had done in silence. The next morning, the fallout arrived faster than I expected. Social media, sharp, viral, merciless, had crowned me villain. Emily's friends posted angry captions, and Michael's family circulated a version painted for sympathy, a callous father ruining his daughter's dream. Within hours, my phone rang with worried clients. Reputation is as fragile as glass. One swipe and it fractures. I didn't panic. I prepared. If one narrative goes out, another can go out louder. Documented, precise, non-emotional. I hired Margaret, an attorney who knew how to turn personal history into legal clarity. Together, we drafted a public statement and an organized disclosure. Years of documented payments, categorized and explained, with receipts attached. Transparency was my tool. Truth, calmly presented, cuts through noise. The press conference was clinical. Margaret stood beside me as I walked through the facts, education costs, housing, medical bills, the wedding vendor list. Journalists leaned in. When you give, you create expectations. When expectations become entitlement, someone must redraw the boundaries. I spoke without rancor. The community that had scorned me began to listen. Responses flipped. Contractors who'd questioned me called back with apologies. Neighbors who'd paused judgment sent messages of support. The social current reversed. Emily's victim narrative looked thin beside facsimiles of bank statements and invoices. Evidence doesn't plead, it convinces. But the change wasn't total. I'd expected backlash, maybe angry calls, but not the personal emptiness that hit me later that week. The man who once picked up a giggling toddler now felt oddly adrift. My business steadied, my community rallied, but my daughter's absence pressed like a concrete slab on my chest. The victory felt complicated, like a structure that stood but had lost a room. That night I sat with a single lamp on the desk, folders spread like blueprints. The lesson had begun for Emily. But what about repair? Accountability without a path to reconciliation is hollow. I knew the next steps had to balance firmness with possibility. The question hung in the air. Could a relationship rebuilt on boundaries still hold the warmth that once warmed a home? Tomorrow would force choices, legal clarity, public reckoning, and a fragile invitation for genuine change if she accepted it. Emily woke to silence heavy with accusation. The hotel room held dresses she had never paid for, unopened gift bags, a wilting floral spray. Her phone showed missed calls and a cascade of messages. Family refusals, polite distance from friends, Michael's curt note that he was going home. The life built on other people's generosity had thinned overnight into shame. She began calling anyone who might help, college friends, a godmother, relatives. Replies offered couches, sympathetic words, offers to apply for temp jobs. No one could erase the ledger her father had published, and no one could conjure $900,000. Panic coiled until she dialed the number she had been avoiding. His voice was calm, the steady tone that once read bedtime stories. The conversation was awkward, then honest. She admitted the posts, the smear, the spectacle at her reception. She apologized without spinning the truth. He listened, asked sharp questions, and offered a conditional lifeline, $1,000, a week in a motel, and a plan work, proof of change, and weekly check-ins. If she failed, the chance would close. The terms were humiliating and necessary. Emily accepted. Her first mission, get any job that paid within days. She applied for night shifts, stacking shelves, retail evening work, temp desk roles. Each application felt like admitting privilege had been squandered. She ate cheap meals between interviews, practiced basic customer service lines, and learned to tie practical ponytails for long shifts. Margaret's office kept legal pressure alive. Formal notices had been filed. Court loomed if repayment failed. The humiliation was public, but a quieter shift began. Tiny acts of responsibility. She returned a misplaced book without a scene. She thanked a clerk genuinely. She learned to read invoices. Small decencies stacked like bricks trying to rebuild respect. Michael left within days, citing family pressure and career risk. His departure was another loss, less dramatic than a public breakup, but lonelier. Without his buffer, Emily faced mornings of cooking, budgeting, and scheduling alone. She found a night job at a grocery store, hands sore from lifting boxes, feet aching from standing. The work was relentless and honest. It taught routine and grit. Her father watched cautiously. He had not wanted vengeance, he wanted boundaries. Public documentation restored his reputation, but it also made the drama permanent record. People debated his choice. Some praised the firmness. Others whispered that family matters should stay private. That tension hardly mattered to him. The goal was repair, not applause. Days shortened into a tight countdown. Emily's calls multiplied. Interviews followed. Margaret advised patience and kept the legal strategy intact. The town began to murmur about forgiveness and accountability. Trust could be rebuilt only through steady actions, not declarations. Then came a pivot. With 10 days left, Emily received a call from a company offering a training position with a path to permanence. It paid enough to begin repaying debt, but required discipline, punctuality, consistent performance, humility. The offer demanded more than money. It demanded proof she could change. On her first day, she arrived early, palms sweating, unsure how long she would last. Her father watched from a distance, silent and guarded. The job was small, the pay modest, but by dusk, Emily felt something unfamiliar and clean, exhaustion mingled with pride. The cliffhanger tightened. Would she keep showing up, week after week, or would old habits pull her back? The answer would shape whether this collapse became a rebirth or a cautionary tale. Every choice, from this morning onward, would count. One misstep could undo progress, but steady work might finally rebuild her life and restore dignity. The months after the legal papers felt like learning a new language. Emily worked mornings stocking shelves, afternoons at a nonprofit, evenings studying budgets and practicing interviews. She kept a small spiral notebook where she tracked hours, wages, and one honest observation each day. Those observations started blunt. I panicked at the register, then sharpened into insight. I avoid responsibility when money solves things. The admissions were the beginning. Michael's absence became a quiet presence. Some friends left, others stayed, those who wanted the real version of her, not the one tied to envelopes. That truth stung, but it cleared space for growth. Margaret's mediator offered a path: steady work, proof of income, counseling, and transparency in exchange for a reduced repayment schedule. Emily signed with trembling hands. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a contract to grow up. Progress was slow. She learned to balance a simple budget: rent, food, transport, savings. She learned the art of applying for jobs without flinching at rejection. At the nonprofit, she learned administration and team coordination. A supervisor said she had leadership potential. The praise felt strange because it had been purchased before. Now, it was earned. There were hard nights. She lay awake retelling memories she'd taken for granted. Once she drafted an apology post and deleted it, choosing instead to write a letter to her father. He replied with restraint, one-sentence emails at first, then longer messages. Meetings felt like negotiations more than reunions. Small courtesies stacked into something resembling trust. News cycles cooled. The Spokane Business Journal ran a follow-up framing the story as accountability rather than scandal. Community leaders who had questioned him called to apologize. Business partners who feared contagion returned with cautious endorsements. The social tide shifted because facts matched the narrative he'd published. The repayment plan became routine: automatic deductions, Counseling sessions, weekly mediator check-ins. Each month she watched the balance inch down as the ledger proved her change. The math mattered less than the discipline. Responsibility seeped into daily life, scheduling dentist appointments, fixing a flat tire, saying thank you without a request. Rebuilding with her father was slowest. They had dinners where conversation stalled and afternoons when they laughed at small things, a movie, a supermarket find. He refused grand reunions. She refused entitlement. Respect returned through mundane rituals. A sincere thank you, a phone call that wasn't a demand, a note left on the kitchen counter. Michael's departure remained painful. He called once, asking if reconciliation might be possible. She said she didn't know. He was absent from milestones that followed job offer, final mediator payment, absent in the way people sometimes are when consequences reveal character. That absence taught her an unexpected lesson. Some losses are irreversible, and acceptance can be part of maturity. On the final mediation day, she signed the last document that reduced her balance because she had met every condition. The clerk stamped the file. She exhaled. The weight she'd carried lightened into steadiness. Not freedom from consequence, but freedom from the compulsion to avoid responsibility. A year later, she brought an envelope to the kitchen table. It contained $200, her first voluntary contribution toward a future she no longer took for granted. Her father folded the bill into his palm and said, "Well done." No speeches. No cameras. Just quiet approval that mattered more than any public validation. The story didn't end with revenge or ruin. It ended with discipline, accountability, and a hard-earned chance to become someone worthy of trust. Years later, at a small family dinner, Emily reached across the table and truly thanked him this time with steady eyes and earned humility.